Many of you are familiar with the so-called khrushchevkas, which exist in every country of the former USSR. The concept of khrushchevkas was developed by the French architect Raymond Camus, and Khrushchev, having visited France, was impressed by such economical housing for the working class and bought the technology of building panel houses from the French. It was adapted to the Soviet style by the famous architect Vitaly Lagutenko, whose task was to make the already cheap projects of apartment buildings as cheap as possible. In 1957, the Central Committee of the CPSU adopted a resolution on the development of housing construction in the USSR. The new housing policy had the goal of providing all Soviet families with separate apartments. The houses had to be built as quickly and cheaply as possible. Some series of khrushchevkas were assembled like a constructor in 12 working days. Another month was spent on interior decoration. Initially, khrushchevkas were built as temporary housing for 20 to 25 years, since by 1980 the government promised to finish building communism in the country, after which the khrushchevkas were to be torn down and more comfortable housing built in their place. From 1958 until Khrushchev's resignation in 1964, that is, in fact, for 6 years, 54 million citizens of the USSR were provided with khrushchevkas. Depending on the locality, khrushchevkas could be 2, 3, 4 or 5 stories. There were several experimental khrushchevkas of 9 stories, but still the lion's share were 5-story buildings. They were considered the most economically advantageous for the country. The fact is that according to the conducted research, which later formed the basis of state construction standards, 5 floors is the maximum height that elderly people and children can climb without difficulties that negatively affect their health and well-being. All buildings with more floors must have an elevator in each entrance. At the same time, in France, most panel houses were 4-story, since according to their research, an elevator was needed from the 5th floor, but Soviet specialists, due to the need to further reduce the cost of housing, decided that if a pensioner managed to climb to the 4th floor, then he will somehow get to the 5th, but on a national scale there will be significant savings. The elevator shaft, equipment, subsequent costs for installation, adjustment and further maintenance significantly increased the cost of the project. In addition, it required additional time for installation, and the established construction deadlines did not allow all this to be done. If it is really not difficult to get up to the 2nd and 3rd floors without an elevator, then it is quite problematic for elderly people and children with a bicycle, bag, or stroller to get up to the 4th and 5th floors. Subscribe to the channel. There will be a lot more interesting things ahead.